Hello and welcome back everyone to Blender Geometry Node workshop for Jungle Vines. In the last lesson, we left ourselves off by setting up a more cleaned up version and getting ourselves a switch for between empty and, if I were to move this downwards a little bit, and random selection. Now we're going to continue on moving on and actually creating ourselves some geometry for this setup. I'm going to use empty for now just so we could have more of an understanding where it's coming from, and we could increase the length a little bit as well. There we go. So we could see how exactly it looks like. And now that we have it like so, we can go ahead and go to the area where we set the position. And from here, we can turn this curve into a mesh. So the easiest way to do that is simply just use Shift and A and search for curve to mesh. Like so. Let's go ahead and add it in onto the curve. And before it actually creates a mesh, it actually needs to determine what kind of a profiler we're using. So how it's going to look like in regards to the shape. And the best way for us to do that is to simply use, if we were to search for curve circle. There you go. That's the nicest way for us to determine that it's just going to be a round setup. Let's go ahead and attach it, and right away we're going to get ourselves this mess. The reason being is that the radius for it is a little bit too big. Let's go ahead and lower this down to a more manageable version. So 0.05, let's put it this way, or actually 0.01. Let's go ahead and keep it like this. And right away you can see that we have a bit of an issue where at the end the gaps are not actually closed off. So it is creating a 3D mesh for us out of the curvature, but we're getting those gaps over here. So we need to make sure we fix that. And for us to do that, we're going to go ahead and click fill gaps, and that'll just right away fill in those gaps. We're also going to lower down the resolution because this is way too much. Setting it up to something like 10 is going to give us a much more manageable result. So this is just simply taking the amount of vertices that it is using for the radius. If we were to set it to something like 3, we can make it triangulated, and this is what we're going to get. And as you can see from this, just from this, we are having an issue where there's a multiple of the meshes coming from one point and whatnot. So we will address this later down the line. Let's go ahead and set this to 10 for now, and let's focus on the shape itself first. And so for us to do that, we're going to move everything a little bit to the side. We're going to basically change up the curve radius. So for us to do that, we're going to just drag, actually we can just click Shift and A, go to search and search for curve radius. Set curve radius. We're just going to attach it right before the curve itself. This way we're able to control the radius like so of the curve. And it's useful to do it beforehand, before actually applying a profiler, because we need to get some information. We need to make sure that we create a curve radius based on where it is in regards to the curve. So at the very start, we want to have a bit of thicker type of curve. And at the end, we want these branches to be smaller. We want them to be thinner overall, basically. So for us to do that, we can actually use spline parameter. We can get some information from this. Let's go ahead and click Shift and A and search for spline parameter like so, and attach the factor to the radius. And just by doing that, we can see that we're getting this kind of result. It's exactly what we want. At the very start, it's going to be thick, and at the very end, it's going to thin out. But the thing is that it's going to be constant. Right now, it's going to have the entire value set as to be gradually decreasing. We want it to be decreasing more towards the end and keep the thickness at the very start a little bit longer, keep the consistency in regards to its width. So we're going to go ahead and fix that. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to firstly create ourselves a new area. We're going to make sure we control the width and whatnot of the branches. And for us to do that, I'll just go ahead and select the empty. Going to go ahead and duplicate item, drag it all the way to the bottom like so. And for this, we can change the name to call it Vines. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to hover over this, going to hit backspace to refresh. Now we're going to make use out of something called map range. Let's go ahead and click Shift and A. Let's search for map range. So this will allow us to basically determine the value, and we are able to rearrange it, basically the minimum and maximum values. For that, for the value itself, instead of using a factor which determines from 0 to 1, we're going to use the length, which determines from the length from the starting point to the actual distance where the spine line ends. Basically, if we were to attach this to a radius like so, it's going to give us a much different result in comparison. But all in all, this is actually going to be a much better use for the map range, because we're again able to determine the distance that we're now able to control. Now, by simply changing this from max, we're able to basically tell how far it's going to start. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and get closer. So if I were to go to a lower value, so 0.01, I just realized that I didn't connect this. Let me just go ahead and connect this like so. I'm going to set this back to 1. And now we can see we're getting this kind of range. So again, from the original size all the way to 0. But once we start setting the maximum value, the starting point, basically offsetting this, we can make use from the maximum. And by just simply lowering it down, you can see that we start basically getting the shrinkage going closer towards the end point. So the closer we are getting to these points, the more offset we're getting from where the value actually starts decreasing. So that's exactly what we want. And that's how we're going to control our radius offset. Let's go ahead and grab ourselves a group input for the side. Let's put it off and let's use the radius offset from maximum. For this, we can set the default value to something like 0.5. Okay, that's all right. I'm going to go ahead and reset this value over here as well. And that's a nice value to make use out of. All right. Now we can finalize this control of the thickness for the vines by getting some controls for the curved circle. So resolution and radius, we should be able to control it from the geometry node itself, from the parameters. So let's go ahead and real quick do that. And yeah, first things first, we're going to get ourselves the radius. Let's go ahead and scroll up, grab ourselves a new input, rename this to radius, like so. And we're going to go ahead and just make a new group input for that. The second one is going to be, well, let's go ahead and attach the radius right away. Second one is going to be resolution. Let's go ahead and add an input for a resolution. This one, instead of a float, it can be integer. That wouldn't give us the decimal spots. And we can just, well, first of all, let's change the name. So we can call this our resolution, like so, and attach it over here, just like that. And I think the default value should be something like, previously we had 10, but let's go ahead and actually use a bit of a lower value. Let's set it to 8. The default value for this can be, well, let's actually have a look. Can be set as 0.02. I think that's a good value. Let me just copy this and paste this onto the default value like so. So just by selecting it, clicking Control C, Control V is a simple setup. This is resolution we already changed. So let's go ahead and change the resolution over here. Let's click backspace to reset it to default value. And there we go. All right, so we're pretty much done with this. In the next lesson, we're going to continue on and actually we're going to start adding leaves onto this vine mesh. And actually, as the final thing, I will actually grab this part over here up until the set position. We'll just drag the set position back. We'll grab these, and just to make sure it's easier to navigate through, we're going to go ahead and join them together. So Control J. We can call this one vine mesh, like so. For now, we're going to leave it as is. The rest, we're going to be able to do it later down the line. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will be seeing you in a bit.